Well, good day, folks, and welcome back to The Secret Soul. This is a program where we look at the book The Secret by Byron Price and try to figure out what these authors, artists, and illustrators were trying to communicate to us in the book The Secret. Today's episode will focus on the foul sewer ogres. If you're following along, I'm on page 154 and 155 in the book The Secret. Well, who are these disgustibus malodorous subterraneous that we're looking for? Who are these people? Well, I don't know. It's kind of a short story. I'm not very, I haven't got a whole lot of information on this particular one. I noticed some glowing eyes over here in this one image. I don't know. That just kind of reminds me of 3 Mile Island, the nuclear accident in Pennsylvania. Basically, this was something that happened on the Susquehanna River in Londonderry Township, Pennsylvania. We just saw Jack London earlier, and we looked at the Emerald Island in the previous chapter. So, if this falls in line with talking about islands and London islands and stuff like that, then maybe they're referring to the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island, which, although it didn't create a big odorous stink, it certainly created a big stink to the nuclear industry. And the only reason I mentioned that one is because the eyes are glowing. Okay, so that's one potential foul sewer odor. Let's look next at the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, which is largely responsible for a lot of these cleanups, whether the river stinks or whatnot. I think that was established under the Nixon administration. I don't know if there's much there. Speaking of stinky streets, the New York public garbage workers struck in 1981. And so this would have been about the time the book came out, and it happened at Christmas time, and all the trash was piling up on the streets. So it's not really a sewer problem, but it is a kind of a problem when it comes to smelly city. This also happened under Mayor Lindsay, and Mayor Lindsay kind of got caught in the New York garbage strike of 1968, when the sanitation workers also struck that year. And I don't know if the sanitation worker strike also included the people that man the wastewater facilities or not. And so this could have actually over into the wastewater treatment plant workers as well in 1968, and perhaps somebody that lives in New York. We know whether or not their toilet backed up that year. Arthur Crapper, I think, is the guy that might have invented the toilet. So you have to lend some things to that. I pulled up an article here about the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland because it's caught on fire and been a cesspool for a number of different times. And city councilmen inspect pollution in the Cuyahoga River in 1964. And then there was a fire in 1969. So I don't know if that had a bad smell to it. I know a lot of cities used to discharge their sewer waste into the river. If you like the other Cleveland connection and you like sewers, the major manufacturer for PVC and the invention of polyvinyl chloride piping actually is a B.F. Goodrich invention. Again, another Akron, Ohio, Cleveland area type of deal. Thomas Crapper invented the U-bend toilet. But this is, again, a guy that's from London or England. It's an English invention. And he sold it shortly after that. The word crap, which is usually bodily waste, uh, was something that the American servicemen stationed in England during World War I saw the name crapper on the toilet and brought it back to the United States. So they became crappers. Um, I remember a couple of different crappers. I remember Kohler sanitary ware. I mean Kohler toilets. I think that's what we had in our house when I grew up. I think I used to see Kohler every time I sat down. And so Kohler, Wisconsin, is where that company originated and came from. The other toilet at the school that I went to said American Standard on it. And that dates back to 1899 to the Standard Sanitary Manufacturing Company and a few other predecessors. American Standard was a combination of American Radiator Company and Standard Sanitary Manufacturing Company, and they formed the American Radiator Standard Company. And this ended up being headquartered in Piscataway, New Jersey. Um, Eventually, the merging of these two companies. There were some other ones that were in 19C or in Detroit and a number of other places. In 1968, the American Standard Company bought Westinghouse Air Brake Company, uh, earth moving and mining product range. Uh, So if you look at the earth moving and mining product uh, ability of the Westinghouse Air Brake Company, then oh, by the way, the Westinghouse Brake Company is out of Pittsburgh, and that's maybe an area. But we'll talk about Wabco later. I like it says Disgustibus because there's a bus accident that we will look into when we get to the calcubus, and the calcubus will solidify the relationship to an air brake and Bendix Corporation. And so I think brake failures on a bus is going to play into one of the solves at some point. Maybe it's the calcubus, which killed a bunch of teen angels on a highway in California and was the largest bus accident ever. Well, involving children, at least. So in 1929, the Standard Sanitary Manufacturing Company uh, was bought by another company in Pittsburgh. And so American Standard Sanitary Manufacturing Company dates back to Pittsburgh. And you can also look at the Standard Radiator Company, which was from Buffalo. But those two got together to be the American Standard that we used to see in the schools when we sat down most of the time. Um, if you want to talk about somebody with a big nose, you probably want to talk about Jimmy Durante, James Francis Durante. He was born on the Lower East Side of New York. Uh, anyway, for those people who like the original New Orleans jazz band, but that was in New York. It wasn't in New Orleans, and none of the members were from New Orleans. So isn't that funny? So he was in vaudeville. He got into radio. I don't know. I just throw in good old Jimmy Durante because when you talk about the noses, he knows. The other famous schnoz, uh, the other famous schnoz that I can think of is Baba. Barbara Streisand had a some was maybe somebody's nose who you could follow. So Barbara Streisand had a schnoz of schnozzes. Barbara Joan Streisand, Barbara. Uh, she was a Brooklyn girl, uh, and Diane Ida Rosen's her mother, and Emanuel Streisand's her father. You could follow her nose. I don't know. One of them was a school teacher. I'm sure they were Jewish. Oh, guess what? They're Polish and the Austrian Hungarian Empire. Okay, so well, they're always either Jewish or Russian or Ukrainian or something like that. Streisand began her education at the Jewish Orthodox yeshiva of Brooklyn. Of course, she's Jewish. Anyway, but if you look at Streisand circa 1962, you cannot miss that news. Um, so there you go. I think that two schnozzes, uh, the nose is one of those two people. So it mentions. I said that if this has to do with the sanitation strike, and that also includes the sanitary sewer uh, places and not just the garbage, then we might be looking at the 1968 uh, political incident for John Villette Lindsay, the strike that occurred during his. And if you look at the foul sewer ogre, uh, who's supposedly in Indiana, but if you put him in New York, he looks a little bit like old. He looks a little bit like Lindsay, and the fact that his family hailed from the Isle of Wight, and we recently before talked about the Emerald Island. Maybe that's the right island. Maybe it's not. Uh, I don't know. But he had to deal with the sanitation strike and other labor issues. And I always like using the verse that says where L sits, and that being just the Lindsay's sitting in the mayor's office, because there's so much snow in that image, that whiteness. I think that might refer to the blizzard of 1969, which was another big problem for Mayor Lindsay, where he just kind of sat there and didn't do anything about the snow. And they actually dubbed this blizzard the Lindsay snowstorm. And considering all the whiteness in that image, I just kind of wondered if that was where L sits. But then again, the one in New York might just be Alto and in Central Park. And we also talked about his party switching earlier, so that's kind of why I always go back to that. But it says specifically here that foul sewer ogres are an underground movement in parts of Indiana. And I think this figure looks a little bit like none other than Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle. I think this image looks a little bit like Dan Quayle. And Dan Quayle later on ended up being the vice president of the United States. But before that, he was a native of Indianapolis, and he spent most of his childhood in Paradise Valley, a suburb in Phoenix, Arizona. But he ended up getting a degree from the Indiana University Robert H. McKinney School of Law. And I think maybe the foul sewer ogres might be just people that are lawyers. You get it? They're foul sewers. In other words, these are the people that sue you. So I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe the Indianapolis, Indiana native, Dan Quayle. And again, in the previous article, we had the bugbear. And then before that, we had the one where they were cleaning ducks that had gotten dirty, right? So we're cleaning up these ducks. And so if you want to clean up a duck, why not clean up a quail? We need to clean up a quail. Maybe we should get some Lux soap out and work on old Dan Quayle for a while, because he's a foul sewer ogre. So I don't know. I just throw that out. He has a relationship to Leo Ryan of California. This is the other reason I think they bring old Danny Quayle up again, is because in 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan of California invited Quayle to accompany him on a delegation investigation of unsafe conditions in the Jonesburg settlement in Guyana. But Unquail was unfortunately unable to go. It probably saved his life because on that fact finding mission, uh, the Jones uh, cult uh, and the whole Jonestown party uh, occurred, and they ended up killing old Leo Ryan. So that's probably why they bring up this guy that's an underground movement in parts of Indiana. That's probably why they're revisiting that because they want to get you back to Leo again and Leo Ryan and his unfortunate circumstances. So I think that's probably why they're revisiting this one. Uh, uh, the the other one we're going to talk about is obviously the Chappaquiddick incident. Uh, Kennedy, and whenever there's a male figure coming out of water, and it's a male figure coming out of water that has a judicial inquest associated with it. You always want to include them in any foul sewer ogres that you might be looking at. And this one was, this foul sewer ogre obviously was driving that Oldsmobile Delmont 88, and then took a tour into the water. Um, I don't recall whether or not Kennedy's became a was actually a lawyer, but he probably was. I think they were all probably lawyers. But he certainly had to get involved in an inquest where he used his foul sewer ogre skills to get himself acquitted of those charges. And so I guess I'm not very confident in my associations of the foul sewer ogres. And I could probably do some more work on this one, but there's just not a whole lot to work on here to use. And that's all I came up with from the story. I mean, you can look up at the history of the bath, PVC piping, um, tiddlywinks, gutter snipe. I mean, a gutter snipe, I looked up that word because I wasn't 100% sure what it was, but it was a scruffy and badly behaved child who spends most of their time on the street. And so, is that Jack London? I mean, is that Jack London who basically his wife or his mother didn't know who the father was, and he was basically raised by the black housekeeper, and I don't know. Are they trying to send you back to badly? Who's the badly behaved child here? I don't know. Um, so anyway, that's all I have on this one. It's pretty weak. Probably one of my weakest pieces. Uh, Being the 50th, I wanted it to be strong, but that's all I got on the foul sewer ogre. If you've got better ideas and come across this video, please post them. But the looks of this. I mean, I like Lindsay. It's got this image has an elongated face on it. And parts of Indiana. I mean, he's probably a member of the House of Representatives because he's not. Although I think he became a senator. It kind of looks a little like a Kennedy. I don't know. It's got a big ear like some of the other Chicago ones, uh, but it says parts of Indiana. All right, folks. That's all I got on this one. I'll be back with another one today sometime. Uh, the next one up will be the inner genie, the Conatus. Maybe this one's from Canada, but I don't think so because it has to do with Edison. and it has to do with a guy putting gas into a car. I don't know if that's Little Richard. Might be Little Richard. Is that Little Richard? Did I look up Little Richard? I don't know. I'm now thinking that might be Little Richard in the next one. Okay, folks. I'll be back to do the Inner Genie next. Click the red button. Oh, I gotta look up. I gotta look that up.